Kevin Durso covers the Flyers for 97.3 ESPN.com. He does an excellent job as always, and he's going to join us now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Kevin_Durso. Follow him for all the updated NHL news, which has been pretty fluid over the last couple of days. We'll get you up to date on it all. It looks like the NFL, I don't think it's official yet. We'll let Durso kind of give us that info about the NHL and the NHLPA finalizing a couple of things. Do the hub cities, have they figured out where they're going to be and getting this thing off the ground? So let's bring in a newly minted married man, Kevin Durso. Congratulations, man. The pictures looked great.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. It was a great day. We had a great time, and it worked out. Couldn't have worked out any better for us. And the wife and I have just been hanging out down in Sea Isle for a few days. This is our last day here. We're leaving tomorrow.
Wow.
So we've had with the exception of today, we had some really nice days of good weather, got on the beach a few times, and we're able to enjoy ourselves. So it's been great.
That's nice. Yeah, the pictures look good. Congratulations to you and the new Mrs. Durso. Your life is changing now, bud, but hopefully you can get back to – now, I don't know that we'll – obviously, you won't be able to get back into the arena to see a game this year because it appears that they're going to both be in Canada. I don't think that's official, but is it looking like both hub cities will be Canadian cities?
It is very much looking that way, and there's nothing official yet. They haven't announced it yet, but it sure seems like that's the direction it's going, and it makes a lot of sense at this point. You know, Vegas had a good hold on being a front runner for a long time with this, and they seemed like they had the capability to create the bubble that they wanted to in terms of a hub city, to put all the players in the same hotel, to be able to give them an access point to the arena, maybe even to give them some things around the hotel and around the area to do outside of just play the game. But as everything changed with the way that the number of cases increased in Vegas and Nevada as a whole, it just made it so it just didn't make it practical to do this in that location anymore. And the idea is that without there actually being a formal report or announcement out there at the moment, the idea is that Vegas is probably out at this point. They're not going to be it either. And it looks very much like it's going to go to Canada. And, you know, Toronto and Edmonton both made very strong cases. They were both giving the options that were needed to make this work. And I think that in the end, that's the two that are going to prevail. And I also believe at this point that that's what gives the NHL one of the better chances to actually find a way to pull this off. It's just taking it out of the country because there's been so much of it. There's so much of an increase in so many different states. And there's so many different things that are changing now, even with states that haven't seen the same level of increases where we're talking about things with, you know, like New Jersey says no more indoor dining. We're pushing that back. Philadelphia did the same thing. And it's not like they had even gotten to the point where they started that to see their cases rise as a result of that. It's just responding to what the rest of the country is going through. And Canada has gotten it relatively under control and is in so much of a better place right now that probably provides the best scenario for the NHL to be a league that can return to play and hold this tournament and give people something to actually watch in the next few months.
Yeah, I know that we're still at phase 3 here. They haven't not moved on to phase 4 to kind of get this date set and everything. But when do we anticipate having the timeline of getting – I know that some players have already started to kind of go back to their camps and that kind of stuff, but do we have an official kind of launching point here yet?
Well, phase 3 is not quite underway yet. They're trying to get that started. The tentative date seemed like it was July 10th. I've heard that it could get delayed a little bit, but nothing extreme. It would probably be pushed back about 3 days. July 13th is a date I've heard, and they're talking about how there's a possibility they could start on July 13th and have the teams head out to these hub cities as soon as July 25th, about a week and a half into the process, almost 2 weeks into the process of phase 3, and have one more week to go where they would get ready to ramp it up and get the games underway pretty soon after that. So it's going to move quickly whenever they decide to do it. And they've worked, you know, you got to give the NHL credit again, and both the players and the Board of Governors and all that type of stuff. They've worked really hard on this. They've had negotiations deep into the night to try to work out these deals, not just with the return to play, but they want to extend the collective bargaining agreement. They want to make sure that the players feel safe in some way. And there's going to be some who may, just like in other sports, who may sit there and say that they don't want to do this. And it's my understanding that the league is going to allow that. If they want to opt out of playing, they can opt out of playing. But there's a lot of players who are showing up in a lot of other areas and starting to report to those training facilities. And just moving forward with this the way that the league has and just going full speed ahead to try to get this off the ground.
Yep, and I know that, and you're right, you're in phase 2, moving on to phase 3, and, the one thing is the CBA stuff. Is there anything there that is a hiccup? Is that all in place? Where do they stand regarding the players and the Players Association?
Things have been pretty good, all things considered. Honestly, they're getting closer to announcing a deal. I had seen Friday night they had reports that they were closing on. They're just continuing to iron out some of those details. There's not a lot that's being talked about in terms of the escrow that I had mentioned, which is just trying to balance out the revenue that the players are able to get versus what the owners get. They try to keep it at a 50-50 split, and if it differentiates in any way, then the escrow comes into effect. But I don't really see too much that's complicated at this point with it. They seem to be coming to terms on a lot of these type of things. There's even talks in this CBA extension that they might actually even be able to get NHL players back into the Olympics and allow them to play in the Olympics again, which was a huge development that was a big question going in. And again, it's like anything else with the international exposure for the game is great. And people definitely love when they get to see these teams. When you see a Team Canada against a Team USA that's loaded with NHL stars, people love to watch it. It's must-see TV when you're watching the Winter Olympics. So if that was a possibility again, and you could get all these players playing in the Olympics too, it would be a really cool thing to see. And that's been part of these discussions as well. They're just continuing to work towards it. They did level up and player signing bonuses. The new league year should have started today. We realistically, in any other normal situation, you guys would probably want to be talking to me and asking questions about free agency.
Right?
And that wouldn't be happening. That's not happening at all. But the players who signed and expected the new league year to begin on July 1st, signing bonuses were paid out today, to my understanding. So that's something that didn't change in the grand scheme of things as they're trying to iron out a whole lot of other issues to defer things like salary cap and figure out what the cap's going to be down the line for the next few years and set up the league structure. And that's why the CBA thing is so important, because it's going to set up the structure of the league for the next 6 years. It's going to take up the next 2 years, which was they still had a CBA in place for the next 2 years. It's not like this is an urgent thing that is going to prevent the league from playing, but they wanted to iron it out so they could have the future of the league kind of mapped out that gets them back from where they've been, over the course of all the things that have happened over the last 3 months that stopped everything in its tracks. It allows them to recover from a financial standpoint, and it tries to balance out what the players may have lost, what the league has lost, and find a way to get that balance back. So those next 2 years are just as crucial as anything. That's why they're renegotiating over that. And then it would extend it for another 4 years too, which is a great sign for where the league is too, because it would just clear that off the table, and it would take a big thing out of play to have those negotiations and discussions again 2 years down the line. So it's a great sign that they're working so well together.
Couple things from Kevin Durso, covers the Flyers for 97.3 ESPN.com, at Kevin_Durso. Now, the NBA has said they're going to try to play the next year around December, but there has been talk of reworking the schedule anyway. There's been some owners that said, hey, how about Christmas Day? Why are we playing? Has the NHL offered any sort of plan on when they want to start next season?
They have not offered anything firm in terms of when they want to start next season, but I did see something interesting over the previous weeks that's worth mentioning, and that's the idea that the NHL could use this little tournament here and kind of use it as a trial run to see if they can pull this off on a yearly basis at this time, during these months. And the idea is that if the NHL decided to do something similar to what the NBA is talking about and push the schedule back and start maybe in December, maybe they start with something that's a big event in the NHL, which would be something like the Winter Classic on New Year's Day. You could start your regular season on that day and play it through to June, and then have the playoffs in July and August, and maybe avoid one of the big seasons that's out there that kind of competes with the NHL and the NBA, and that's the football season. That's the NFL schedule. You could kind of avoid a big chunk of it. Revenues get higher after February once football season's over for fans attending games. There's a lot of things that play into their favor, and the league's been advised in the past, apparently, that what if you tried to play your season later to take advantage of these months over the summer where you're not competing directly with the football season? And this could turn into a trial period for them to see if that's possible, and maybe become a thing that if this could become a regular thing where the league starts the season later and we're watching hockey from, say, January to August as opposed to October to June. It could become a reality. It's something that's been floated around. There's nothing that's going to be firm on that for a while. I think they want to see that they can even pull this off first. But it's an idea that was floated around, and I definitely thought it was an interesting one, given the fact that you're going to probably see this, you're going to see this tournament go off, I think, and if especially now that you're going to a place that seems to have a lot more under control than the U.S. does. And if you can get this tournament off the ground and show that you can play hockey in the summer months a little bit, you might see the schedule change a lot.
All right, great stuff from Kevin. We'll get you out on this. And by the way, thank you for coming on the show while you're on your kind of honeymoon here. We appreciate that. Monday, I guess it was, the 29th, Monday, the NHL had a statement on COVID testing results, 6%. What's the context of that? Good, bad, indifferent? How do you take the statement from the NHL Monday that had an excess of 250 players get tested and, actually, wait, 250 reported to the facilities. There have been an excess of 1,400 COVID testing and a total of 15 players confirmed. So what's the context there? Well,
15 positive tests or players testing positive out of 250 is exactly a 6% rate. And this is just the players we know of in the training facilities at this point. And 6% is not a good number on the surface. It's just not a good number. But the thing that I wanted to put into perspective with it is that if you included the 11 players that you factored in from the start of Phase 2, which was June 8th, if you took those 11 players, you issued an update about a week earlier, a little more than a week before that, about those 11 players. The question that I had going in was how many more were going to test positive in another week's time. And according to these figures, and it was confirmed, the 15 included the previous 11. So you only had 4 new positive tests in a week from players in actual training facilities, which is certainly a good rate. The 11 that are out there that are part of the grouping that did not participate in Phase 2 training and were just working out on their own is also not as extreme of a number as it seems, because there's probably another 400, 500, 600 players out there who are trying to work their way back in some capacity. And that would be part of these other teams that are in the playoff. And if you're talking about 11 again out of, say, 600, that's not a huge rate either. So there's a way to pull this off. The big question is going to be, as you start to get everybody back into their training facilities closer to Phase 3 and you're working towards full team practices and you're talking about 30 players on the ice at one time and coaches involved and all that, can you pull off a 35-person group and avoid having rates that are around 6%? I just don't know if that's going to be, if that's going to hinder the process any. And it could if you start to see rates really rise, especially since you're scattering these players all over the country until you can get to Phase 3 and get to the end of Phase 3 and get to Phase 4, I should say, which is the start of the games. So that's the big question, but I took that as more of a positive sign than a negative, that it was only 4 new positive tests in about a week and a half time. And you're talking 4 out of 250 that, again, and hopefully those 11 others have started to recover, and that helps the process too. But those things to me indicated that the numbers were at least dropping in terms of who was working out in training facilities. And that's a positive sign, because players are basically getting a smaller version of what kind of testing and what kind of protocol they're going to have in Phases 3 and 4. And if you're already seeing the numbers stay relatively under control in that sense, then you might be able to do something like that, especially when you get it to Canada and you have the hub cities in place. So hopefully that's a sign that things can stay under control and that they can get these games off the ground, because it would be a great thing for the NHL if they can pull this off.
For more on the NHL and the Flyers, of course, follow him on Twitter at Kevin_Durso. And as we get more NHL and Flyers news, we will check in with Kevin. Appreciate the time, pal.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And Kevin Durso, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline, giving us the lowdown